So a lot of people these days are getting into specifically into D2C brands and starting startups around that category. Also exploring. I've seen a lot of people also get into hardware startups. I think the EV boom has actually propelled people getting into hardware, getting interested in hardware, battery technology. So what would your advice be as somebody who's done that and been there for the last 3-4 years? And secondly, what would you advise them against not doing? I think a lot of people talk about what you need to do, but also very important to know what you shouldn't be doing. So what would you tell to such entrepreneurs who are just starting off?
So one is there are two parts to it. One is pure hardware. Second is hardware plus software hybrid. For example, if you look at the EV, there are two parts to it. One is just making batteries. Second is making swap stations where they are actually renting out energy. But if a hardware is, for example, making only pure hardware, then they really have to focus on getting the product to market ASAP. First part. Second part is that they need to ensure that they're protecting the margins.
Right.
Because in software you can have software as a service where you can have a long tail model. So your customer acquisition cost you can spend a lot. In hardware, either you have to figure out how to do a long tail model, which lot of EV players are doing by doing EV swap stations, or selling a vehicle and then battery as a service.
Right.
Something like that, where it is again becoming a long tail, which is interesting and which would evolve. But if it is a one-time sales, if the product is a one-time sales, then the margins are very important.
Right.
Many times people discount it. Once the margin is gone in hardware, it is unlikely that it's going to come back.
Okay.
It is very unlikely. And as long as many of the times the bigger challenges what I see in the VC domain to invest in a pure hardware startup is that if you sell something, for example, if you sell a car, there is no repeat customer. You sell it once and they're gone.
Right.
The reason why they like SaaS or software is that you sell it once, they're coming repeat. Correct. Month after month, year after year.
Right.
That is the biggest entry barrier for the VC world to invest in a hardware startup.
Okay.
Second is when a founder is building a hardware startup, they have to be very, very careful what is their business model.
Got it.
Some of the business models in the hardware startup is unfundable.
Makes sense.
Because they have to look it from the VC perspective also, because many times hardware is subjected to the gravity. You cannot just, if you are manufacturing 100 units, you cannot just manufacture 1000 units next month. It takes finite time. It is not like you are running in AWS, suddenly you just scale it infinitely, like 1 million customer comes, they'll not. And same is the problem. If you build for a 1 million customer, if they don't come, then you have a huge inventory.
Makes sense.
So the growth in a hardware startup is also one of the challenges where you have to tune it properly. Otherwise you'll end up with lot of issues.
Makes sense.
So ensuring that the entire operational flow, all the way from product to inventory to the product going to the customer, that has to be very, very tightly controlled. Otherwise you can just easily run out of money.
Makes sense.
Very easily.
Makes sense. Did you have that fear when you were building your company? Did you think that there could be a point where you may not have money to pay salaries or even do the manufacturing?
Yes, that is always there. That's why we always had a monthly MIS and monthly cash flow, inventory flow constantly monitored for that.
Okay.
Because very easy to over-invest in the inventory in a hardware startup. Very easy. Unless you put appropriate controls, you can just by the blink of it, you can build a couple of crore worth of inventory just like that. It will just pile up.
Makes
because
sense.
you are expecting so much customers, so you would procure, because hardware life cycle is generally 3 to 4 months.
Right.
From procurement to production to putting it to the market. That too, with the current component shortages, it's getting longer and longer.
Right.
So that operational aspects of running the company is lot more dynamic and lot more challenging for a hardware startup than a software startup, because software startups only expense is salaries for the people.
Right.
You can scale up or you can scale down. Like for example, you can just fire a few people, even though it looks harsh. You can just fire a few people and reduce the salary burden. In hardware, if you have made an investment on the component, you cannot just,
makes
that money is gone, that money is stuck.
Right.
You either make the product and sell it, or it's gone.
Right.
So that is there, and then there is a failures. Initial product will have failures, that has to be very thought through. You
Makes sense.
overproduce it and then many of it fails, then you have to at your cost replace those products.
Makes sense.
So these are some of the challenges that founders have to think very carefully in a hardware startup.